Galeta Island. Galeta Island was used for strategic communication and intelligence research by the Navy beginning in the 1930s. In 1959, it became a Naval Security Group activity facility, and it was turned over to the Republic of Panama on the 31st of December, 1999, the last day that anything could be turned over. The island was also shared with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, and they still maintain a research facility on the island, just located east of the communications facility. All right. This was reported by two people, actually, Michael Linerance and Bob Mitchell. And this area, you know, as Michael says, the jungle and so forth and vegetation was kept back from this this antenna area. And, you know, they note, well, it still appears to be devoid of vegetation 50 years later. This particular place had an operations building in the middle, and I'll show you some pictures, but there's an antenna array that runs around it. I want to back up a little bit. We'll go through the attachments first. I'll show you the 1969 map, and as you can see, here's the area that we're talking about. And here is a CZ map fragment, and what we're talking about is right out in this area. Okay, this is a picture that Bob Mitchell took in, I believe it was in the 80s. And you can see the access road coming in and the operations building, the antenna array, and you can see how the vegetation is kept away. All right, and here was a write-up on it. As you can see, here's a picture of it in the mid-1960s. And as we saw what it looks like today. And the Smithsonian Research Institute that was mentioned is over here and still in operation. Another point on Galeta Island, and this was a Tropical Test Center, TTC test facility. And I added it based on the TTC map. And here is our view from 1969. The TTC map shows it here as number 23. We call it the Galeta Test Facility. France Field. The airport was established in 1918 as a United States Army Air Force military airfield. Eventually, it became France Field Air Force Base. It was deactivated on the 1st of November 1949 due to budgetary reductions. The Air Force maintained jurisdiction over the airport until the 31st of December 1973. Reportedly, there's a chemical burial site that was established at France Field in the 30s. With the return of the Canal Zone to Panama on the 31st of December 1999, American control of France Field ended. On August 20th, 2013, Panama opened a new international airport on the site. The new terminal can serve up to 1,000 passengers at peak period, and the new runway can land aircraft of the Boeing 757 size. So here we see the new France Field. I'll back out some. And part of what was done to the airport was the runway was extended in both directions, here and up this way. New taxiways were put in, and this would be the terminal that was built. I had one of the locations that I mentioned that not all locations could be mapped that were suggested. And one of those was a Coco Solo Navy ammo area. And unfortunately, when the runway was extended, they went over and removed that area. It was in here. Now, what I did was to tag an area. I tagged one that is, it's away from the active stuff going on in the new terminal, and down by the perimeter of France Field, and off of part of the old taxiways in here. Pull up sample, and I'm hoping you're able to see this. As part of the range study that was done in late 90s, there was a concern brought up that, well, we ought to be looking also around France Field. And this was brought up by a consultant that was hired. His name was Rick Stauber. And he was a former bomb disposal expert, and he had 20 years in the Army. And they brought him in to study sites. And he was suspicious of not only France Field, but also Rio Hatta, which is on the other side. And he felt that surplus bombs and so forth may have been dumped in the sea or buried near these airfields. When he arrived, though, in Panama, he was told he can't look at those. He was to focus only on Empire Range and Balboa West and Pena Range. When he reached the end of his, or came up for contract renewal, his contract was not renewed. And a second article, and this talks quite a bit about the use of chemical and biological agents in Panama. And within this, it does talk about France Field and the fact that it was used to store particularly chemical agents. Okay, so I showed you what France Field looked like in the new one. And again, our 1969 view is low resolution, but you can see the runway, see the pinned area, and the runway was not as long. The original runway was made out of concrete, and when I was down there in the early 70s, it was in very poor shape. I mean, it was buckled and cracked and everything else. And despite that, occasionally we had a Panamanian plane who wanted to land there. And in fact, some of them did land there. Our old fragment of the CZ map shows the layout of the old Frenchfield runway. Our pin is right over in this area. You see the runway ended here. And the ammo depot that I mentioned to you for Coco Solo is up here, which is now underneath the extended runway. And the hangars and so forth used to be all over in this area. And as I mentioned, there was a Tropical Test Center activity in this area. It's number 15, Coco Solo Test Facility.
I'd like to thank veteran Richard Wyman for putting together all of this information on possible places to test in the Panama Canal Zone. I'd like you to all come over to the Military Veterans Advocacy and join with us today. We are further than we have ever been before. We have a rulemaking request that's been granted by the VA Secretary. We have an HR 5026 bill for Panama introduced into the Congress, and we could not have done that without the Military Veterans Advocacy and the leadership of Commander John Wells. There's also a ton of information under the Veterans of Panama Canal that we have submitted to the VA Secretary who granted our requests. So this information might be able to help you in your claims. And if you need help with an attorney, if you're at the appeals level, use our contact button and contact our administrative staff and they can guide you for help.